Well, on Christmas Day, a 77-year-old criminal defendant facing racketeering charges and other felonies in 4 jurisdictions said that his prosecutors should rot in hell. And unlike every other criminal defendant who has said that, he didn't mumble it to himself bitterly, alone in his jail cell awaiting trial. He didn't say it angrily to a cellmate. He said it through the reach of social media to the world. And while he was at it, he said the President of the United States should rot in hell. The 77-year-old criminal defendant is also the leading Republican candidate for President of the United States, thanks to the inexplicable political perversion of most Republican Party voters who have chosen to support a man who has described himself as being perverse. That was his word. Donald Trump is now the first former president in history to say that any other American president, including the slave owners, should rot in hell. There is no evidence that Donald Trump believes that there is a hell or that there is a God. He obviously has not lived a single day of his life based on a belief in hell or God, and there is no decision he ever made in his life that can be traced to a belief in hell or God. But that does not render Donald Trump's condemnation of President Biden to hell harmless, because the only way Donald Trump's most fervent Christian followers believe Joe Biden can burn in hell is if he is dead. And so, like so much Donald Trump says, the rotten hell quote can be read as an indirect death threat. Blaming the criminal cases against him on President Biden is something Special Prosecutor Jack Smith wants to ban from the courtroom. Today, Jack Smith filed a motion to limit the kinds of wild accusations Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers can launch during the trial in Washington, D.C. of Donald Trump's possible crimes leading up to and on January 6th in his attempt to overturn the presidential election. Donald Trump is now appealing a ruling by the trial judge in that case, Tanya Chutkan, denying Donald Trump's claim of complete immunity for all of his conduct while serving as president of the United States. The Supreme Court denied Jack Smith's motion to move that appeal directly to the Supreme Court and bypass the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. So the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. will hear oral arguments in that case on January 9th, which is an expedited schedule of that appeal by the appeals court. So January 9th is the next big date for defendant Trump and for Jack Smith. The last time the appeals court issued an opinion on an issue in this case, they delivered that opinion 2 weeks after the oral argument. If they hold to that sort of expedited schedule for this appeal, you can expect an appeals court ruling by the end of January, and you can then expect that ruling to be appealed to the United States Supreme Court, which would then possibly add another month or two or more before we get a final ruling by the United States Supreme Court on whether the President of the United States is allowed to commit any crime that crosses a president's mind while serving as president. And that could mean that the very first criminal trial, the schedule of all of that could mean that the very first criminal trial of Donald Trump would be prosecuted by the very first prosecutor in history to file criminal charges against a former president of the United States. Today, our first guest, Andrew Weissmann, tweeted that the ongoing appeal of the January 6th case could lead Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to, quote, push forward with the March 2024 trial date that they already have scheduled in that case. Andrew Weissmann said, so the first criminal case brought against Trump will also be the first to go to trial.